When I was 17, I moved from Europe to the US to attend a Catholic high school. Everything felt surreal, like I had stepped into a teen movie. Lockers, football games, loud cafeterias, even active shooter drills. Some things were fun, some strange, and some made no sense at all, but I loved every minute of it. I adapted quickly, and within a month, I had a solid group of friends. One of the biggest changes for me was how classes worked. Back home, we stayed in the same room all day while teachers rotated. In the US, we switched classrooms every hour. Chaotic at first, but eventually it grew on me. My favorite class was English, mostly because of my friends. That's also where I sat next to a guy named Mark. Quiet, a little awkward, but kind. Not outgoing, but people knew him. Early on, I noticed that Mark never looked anyone in the eye. His gaze darted around the room or dropped to the floor. I assumed it was just shyness, a quirk, not a red flag. About a month into the semester, things were going well. One morning in English, I asked if I could copy the end of homework I hadn't finished. He handed it over without hesitation, we chatted briefly, and then class went on. That was the last time I saw him that week. The next day, Mark was absent. At first, no one thought much of it, but after a few days, rumors began to spread. The prevailing story was that Mark had gone home and found his mother dead. My stomach turned. He was such a quiet, nice person. I couldn't imagine the pain he must have been in. Then the rumors grew wilder. Some said she'd taken her own life, others that she had been murdered or attacked. People speculated with shocking casualness, gossiping as if it were nothing more than high school drama. I was furious at the disrespect. Eventually, Mark returned to school. Pale, distant, almost a shell of himself. Everyone tried to show support, but I wasn't good at that kind of thing. When I saw him in English, I simply put an arm around him. "Hey man, I heard. I'm really sorry." For the first time, he looked me in the eye. Something in that gaze gave me chills. It wasn't just grief. It was colder, hollow, something darker than I could understand. I told myself he was in shock, mourning in his own way. I gave him space. But then I started noticing a man hanging around the cafeteria during lunch. A friend said he was the husband of one of the counselors. Rumors spiraled further, and I snapped at people trying to spread them. Show some respect. Someone had died. A week later, everything changed. All seniors were called to the gym. The principal stood at the front, and beside him was the man I had seen in the cafeteria. But he wasn't a counselor's husband. He was a detective. He revealed the horrifying truth. Mark hadn't returned home to find his mother dead. He was the one responsible. One morning, she refused to give him the car keys. Mark snapped, strangled her, got dressed, packed his bag, and came to school. Sat next to me, let me copy my homework like it was any other day. After school, he calmly called the police. I felt my blood run cold. It wasn't just the murder, it was the casualness. The polite, quiet kid next to me had carried something so dark beneath the surface. The school brought in a grief counselor, but no one I knew ever spoke to him. We tried to move on, tried to pretend it was over, but I never forgot it. Late at night, I still think about that moment when Mark finally met my eyes. You never really know someone. The quietest, most unassuming person can be hiding a darkness you could never imagine. It's a chilling reminder. Appearances are fragile, and beneath the surface, people can carry secrets that change everything in an instant. I'm about to share a story that happened to me and a friend roughly 8 years ago. Even though it was terrifying for me, I can hardly imagine the fear she must have felt once she fully realized everything that went down that night. To give you some context, I'm a guy in my late 20s, over 6 feet tall and around 200 pounds. I've always been a little too nice to my friends, often doing favors even when they seemed a bit ridiculous, as long as it wasn't too far out of my way. Most of the time it's just, "Hey, I'm drunk, can you give me a ride home?" Well, around 1:30 a.m., I got that exact call. My very, very drunk friend, Claire, was begging me to come pick her up. The bar she was at was closing, she was too intoxicated to drive, and she lived across town, about 35 to 45 minutes away. The bar itself was only 10–15 minutes from my house, so I owed her this one. By about 1:50 a.m., I grabbed my keys, slipped my concealed carry into my waistband, and left. I got to the bar a few minutes later and found her slumped on a bench outside. I hoped she wasn't passed out completely. The doorman pulled me aside, a serious look on his face, and whispered that he suspected she'd been drugged. She had been out on the porch drinking all night, and some guy had been hovering around her. Claire came over to me, dizzy and borderline sick, and I tried to reassure her. But she passed out almost immediately. I thanked the doorman profusely as he helped me carry her to my car. She was groggy, mumbling nonsense like someone waking from surgery, but I stayed vigilant, alert to the possibility that something more sinister had happened. Once she was secured in the car, I started driving her home, keeping a careful eye on both her and the road. She fell asleep, which gave me a little peace of mind. But halfway to her neighborhood, the fuel light popped on. I cursed the sports car's terrible gas mileage and pulled into a small, poorly lit gas station. As I pumped gas, I heard a metallic scraping sound and saw a man, only 10–20 feet away, dragging a long metal pipe. He wasn't looking at me directly, he seemed possessed, but I immediately sensed danger. Then he spoke. "Hey man, you took my girlfriend from me. I'm here to take her back." His bloodshot eyes locked onto mine, and he stepped toward me. I yelled, trying to scare him off. "Back the hell off, man! Turn around and leave, and no one has to get hurt." But he didn't stop. Almost instinctively, I drew my handgun and aimed at him. "Back off! You don't have to die tonight." My voice cracked from fear. Martial arts training can only do so much against a crazy guy with a pipe, and the adrenaline was overwhelming. The man threw the pipe at me, narrowly missing, and I dove behind my car for cover. By the time I peeked over the rear, he was gone. He ran to a car, slammed the door, and sped off. Heart pounding, I finished at the pump and tore out of there. Claire was still passed out, and I feared for her safety, convinced she had been roofied and that we'd been followed. I drove aggressively, constantly checking for any car behind us. When I reached her neighborhood, I circled a block a few times to be sure we weren't being followed. Once confident, I pulled up to her house, gently shook her awake, and helped her inside. She was groggy, tearful, and still processing the danger she had narrowly escaped. I laid her down in bed and left a note. "I'm in the next room. We're going to the hospital in the morning to get you checked out." The next morning, Claire was violently sick, but we got her to the hospital. Tests revealed traces of rohypnol in her system. It was terrifying to realize how close she had come to real danger. I still shudder to think what could have happened if I hadn't had my CCW with me that night. Claire barely remembers anything from that night except calling me and wanting to sit near the doorman. For anyone listening, my advice is simple. Always stick with friends you trust, or at the very least, remain vigilant if you're alone. That night could have ended badly in countless ways. Thankfully, we both made it out alive. In the days following, we reported the incident to the bar and gave as accurate a description of the man as we could. Claire decided against filing a police report, and I respected her choice. In my book, she had already been through far too much. A little background first, because trust me, you'll want context for this story. I've always been a bigger girl, not extremely obese, but chunky enough that it's obvious. And no, it's not from overeating. I have polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS, which can make weight management nearly impossible due to my hormones being out of whack. With that comes insulin resistance, basically pre-diabetes. In my 20s, I've been taking a medication called metformin to manage it. It's not addictive, but I have to take it with my heaviest meals, usually lunch and dinner. On this particular Friday, November 2nd, my class got cancelled because my instructor was ill, giving me extra time before work. Normally, I'd grab a sandwich and coffee to go, but this time I decided to sit at the cafe and eat. I ordered my usual plain latte and a turkey bacon wrap, took a window seat to watch the bus stop, and put my earbuds in while zoning out to a podcast. After finishing my wrap, I fished out my pill bottle, popped my metformin, and washed it down with my latte. That's when he appeared. A tall, burly man, pale as a sheet, with a broom mustache, approached my table and motioned for me to take out my earbuds. Confused, I did. "Excuse me, miss, but what exactly are those?" he asked, pointing at my pills. I was confrontational by nature, especially when threatened. "That's none of your business," I said. In a blink, he opened his jacket, flashing what looked like a police badge. "I think it is my business. What are those narcotics?" My rational brain shut down. Shocked, I could only stammer, Before I could react, he grabbed my pill bottle. If you know anything about prescription labels, you know they have your full name on them. He now had my personal info in his pocket. "I'm confiscating these," he said. "Come with me downtown, or I'll place you under arrest." Half panicked, half stunned, I flatly said, "No." He pulled out real metal handcuffs and repeated his demand. My instincts finally kicked in. "I'm not using drugs, that's my medication," I yelled. He tried to grab my arm. I slammed myself against the window, shouting, "Give me back my medication. It's for diabetes, and it says so right on the bottle. Call backup." I grabbed my phone to dial 911. One of the baristas appeared, demanding, "What the hell are you doing?" The man panicked and ran. My bottle, my life-saving medication, was gone. The real cops arrived minutes later.
Surveillance showed he had been sitting at the cafe for over an hour, but hadn't bothered anyone else, only me. I had to go to the station to file a report, confirming there were no undercover cops in the area that day. This was 100% a fake cop. I was furious and terrified. Human trafficking exists, and the thought of being alone with this man sent chills down my spine. I worried about my medication, my safety, and what he could do with my personal info. A week later, my pills were recovered a few blocks away, still half full. The police were treating it as attempted abduction. The man could have tampered with my medication, so the cops kept the bottle for evidence. Since then, I've been hyper-aware, even taking a longer bus route to avoid the creep. Finally, justice came. The fake cop was arrested after following another woman near the cafe. I went to a lineup and confirmed it was him. I'm pressing charges for attempted abduction and assault. While I still don't know his full motives, I can finally breathe easier and take my usual bus route again. The terrifying encounter is over, for now at least. But it reminded me how quickly everyday life can turn into a nightmare.
I can hardly believe it myself when I say this story happened over 20 years ago, back when I was your typical angsty teenager, moody, angry at the world, and convinced I was invincible. Ironically, that exact attitude might be the only thing that saved my life. The guilt has never fully let go, and until now, I've never told this story in full. At the time, we lived in one of the nicer parts of the city, though that didn't mean much. Petty crimes and muggings were common, though to my knowledge, no one had died from them, at least not yet. I didn't follow the news, local or otherwise, and I could tell my mom was becoming increasingly anxious. I didn't care enough to ask why. Every week, it was the same routine. Lock the doors, don't walk alone, don't talk to strangers. Typical safety lectures. But at 16, being told to be careful felt like an insult. I didn't want warnings, I wanted freedom. Our first real fight about it happened when she told me I could no longer walk home from the train station. I was taking extracurricular classes downtown and rode the train to the very last stop, just 10 minutes from our apartment. I had been making that same walk since I was a kid, rain or shine, day or night, and always felt safe. I'd plug in my headphones, blast something loud and angry on my CD player, and walk home in a bubble of music and independence. We argued endlessly. I accused her of treating me like a child, of being controlling, of trying to steal my freedom. She tried to reason with me, but I wasn't listening. Eventually, we compromised. I could walk home as long as it was still light out. After dark, I'd call for a ride. Not ideal, but I agreed, just to end the conversation. Everything came to a head one rainy night when I was coming home later than intended. I don't remember exactly why I was so angry, only that every little thing that day felt like throwing gasoline on a fire. By the time my train pulled in, the sun was long gone over the horizon. The last thing I wanted to do was call my mom. I wasn't made of sugar, and I certainly wasn't going to back down. I got off the train, storming into the night, headphones on, fists clenched, just ready to be home. The route was well lit, except for one stretch. A bend in the road, bordered by overgrown hedges, part of an abandoned lot. No streetlights for about 100 feet. I barely registered where I was because I was lost in my own imaginary battles. Then someone jumped out from behind the bushes. A man, knife in hand. I remember the glint of it, the hood over his face, and that unmistakable stench of alcohol. I don't recall him saying anything. If he did, I didn't hear it. At that exact moment, my CD player slipped from my hands and smashed into the pavement. For those old enough to remember, it was a Sony Discman. Something inside me snapped. All the rage I'd carried that day exploded outward. I screamed, cursed, shoved him hard in the chest, yelling, "Are you kidding me right now?" over and over. I wasn't thinking about the knife. I was furious at the world, at my shitty day, at him. I bent down to pick up the shattered pieces of my CD player, completely ignoring the danger staring me in the face. When I stood up, he was gone, just gone. Still fuming, I stomped the rest of the way home, clutching my broken Discman like it was the final straw on an already cursed day. I muttered under my breath, occasionally turning to shout, "Fuck you, man," into the darkness behind me. When I got home, my mom was livid I hadn't called. I didn't tell her everything. I was afraid she'd reference our earlier argument, and I didn't want her to win. The reality of what I survived didn't hit until later, in the shower, when the adrenaline drained and my body shook. Somehow, I cried harder for my Discman than for the fact that I could have died. A few days later, I overheard my mom on the phone. Her voice was low, tense. A neighbor, someone I had gone to Sunday school with, had been found stabbed to death in the abandoned lot behind the hedges. The same place I had been confronted, same time of night. My mom whispered the words "serial killer," describing a stream of attacks targeting wealthier neighborhoods. I said nothing. I still haven't, but I think about that night more than I can count. Why did he run? Maybe he didn't expect me to fight back. Maybe I caught him off guard. Or maybe he realized I wasn't the easy target he was hoping for, the way he found my neighbor. Sometimes I think it was my anger that saved me. Other times, I shudder at just how close I came to dying before I even realized I was in danger. That night changed me, not because of fear, but because of the thin line between life and death, the way a single decision, a moment of fury, can tip the scale. I've never been the same since, and I'll never forget how close I came to becoming a story in someone else's nightmare.